Imagine a bustling marketplace in ancient India, around the 6th century BCE. The air is thick with the scent of spices and the chatter of traders. What are they using for money? Not gold, not silver, but something much more common. They are using pieces of metal, carefully weighed and stamped. These were some of the very first coins. We call them Karshapanas, or punch-marked coins. They represent a huge leap forward in how people thought about trade and value. Before this, you might have traded a cow for some grain, which isn't always very convenient. Coins changed everything. They were small, portable, and everyone agreed on what they were worth. These early coins were often made of silver, but copper played a vital role too. Copper was cheaper and more abundant, which made it perfect for everyday transactions. Think about buying a loaf of bread or a small pot of oil. You wouldn't want to use a valuable silver coin for that. Copper coins filled this gap beautifully. They were the small change of the ancient world. The earliest copper Karshapanas were not perfectly round like our coins today. They were often irregular shapes, like small flat squares or rectangles. Craftsmen would take a sheet of copper, cut it into pieces, and then stamp it with various symbols using punches. The symbols on these coins are fascinating. They weren't portraits of kings or queens like we see later. Instead, they were symbols that people would recognize. You might find a sun, a stylized hill with a crescent on top, or perhaps an animal like a bull or an elephant. These symbols were like a guarantee. They told you that the coin was the correct weight and purity. They were the mark of the authority that issued them, whether it was a local kingdom or a powerful merchant guild. Each mark was a story, a little piece of history pressed into the metal, connecting the person holding it to a larger system of trust and commerce. So, the journey of the copper coin begins here, in the vibrant city-states, or Mahajanapadas, of ancient India. It wasn't a grand invention announced with trumpets and fanfare. It was a practical solution to a common problem. It was an idea that empowered ordinary people, allowing them to trade more easily and build their local economies. These humble copper pieces laid the groundwork for complex financial systems that would span centuries and continents. They were more than just money. They were a symbol of a new kind of society, one built on trade, trust, and a shared understanding of value. It's a story of innovation from the ground up. As the centuries rolled on, the idea of using copper coins really took off. After the first punch-marked coins, many different kingdoms and empires across India began to mint their own. The Mauryan Empire, which united much of the subcontinent, created a more standardized system. But after its fall, India broke into a patchwork of smaller kingdoms, and each one wanted to put its own stamp on its money. This led to an incredible variety of copper coins. It was a bit like every region having its own unique currency. The coins tell a story of political change, with new rulers and dynasties rising and falling, each leaving their metallic mark. Let's look at some of the stars of this period. The Kushan Empire, which flourished in the north of India, produced some truly beautiful copper coins. These weren't just simple stamped pieces anymore. The Kushans were influenced by the Greeks who had come to the region with Alexander the Great. Their coins often featured realistic portraits of their kings on one side, looking very regal indeed. On the other side, they would have images of gods and goddesses from a mix of Indian, Greek, and even Iranian traditions. A single copper coin could show a Kushan king dressed in a heavy coat and boots, a sign of their Central Asian origins. Meanwhile, in other parts of India, different styles were emerging. The Satavahana dynasty in the Deccan Plateau created coins with images of elephants, lions, and ships. The ship-type coins are particularly exciting for historians. They suggest that the Satavahanas were a major maritime power, trading across the Indian Ocean. Imagine a sailor using a copper coin with a ship on it to buy supplies before a long voyage. These coins weren't just for local markets. They were part of a much bigger story of global trade and connection. They are tiny pieces of evidence that help us piece together the past. The Gupta Empire, often called India's Golden Age, is famous for its stunning gold coins. But they didn't neglect copper. They also produced a large number of copper coins for daily use by the general population. These often featured the mythical bird Garuda, the mount of the god Vishnu, which was the symbol of the Gupta dynasty. The sheer quantity and variety of copper coins from this era show us just how essential they had become. From the grandest empire to the smallest local chieftain, everyone understood the power and convenience of these little copper discs for keeping the wheels of the economy turning smoothly. Now, let's shift our gaze westward, to the Middle East in the 7th century CE. A new power was rising, the Islamic Caliphate. As the early Muslim armies expanded their territory, they encountered the existing coinage of the Byzantine and Sasanian empires. Initially, they simply adapted what was already there. They would take Byzantine copper coins, known as the folis, and sometimes counterstamp them with a short Arabic inscription like Bismillah, meaning "in the name of God." It was a practical solution. Why reinvent the wheel when you could just modify it a little? This was a transitional phase, a fascinating blend of old and new. However, it wasn't long before the Islamic rulers wanted a currency that was truly their own. Under the Umayyad Caliph, Abd al-Malik ibn Marwan, a major monetary reform took place around the year 696 CE. This was a revolutionary moment. The Caliph ordered that all new coins should be purely Islamic in design. The old images of emperors and religious symbols were swept away. In their place came elegant Arabic calligraphy. The new copper coin was called the fals. This name was simply an Arabic version of the old Byzantine name, Phalis. But the coin itself was completely different in spirit. What did these new copper coins look like? They were striking in their simplicity. Instead of a picture of a ruler, the focus was on the Word of God. The coins were covered in inscriptions from the Quran. They would often state the Islamic declaration of faith: "There is no God but God, and Muhammad is his messenger." The coins also included the name of the mint where they were made and the year they were struck, according to the Islamic calendar. This was incredibly useful. For the first time, you could look at a coin and know exactly where and when it was made. This change was about more than just economics. It was a powerful political and religious statement. By removing all images, the Caliphate was making a clear declaration of its monotheistic faith. Every time someone used a copper fals to buy their daily bread, they were holding a piece of Islamic ideology in their hand. The coin became a tool for spreading the message of the new faith across a vast and diverse empire. It was a way of unifying people under a single identity, where the ultimate authority was not an emperor's face, but the sacred text of Islam. The humble copper coin had become a messenger. The monetary reforms of Abd al-Malik were just the beginning. As the Islamic world expanded, so did the use of the copper fals. From Spain in the west to the borders of India in the east, mints were set up in major cities to produce these new coins. The fals became the workhorse currency of this vast territory. While wealthy merchants and aristocrats might deal in gold dinars and silver dirhams, it was the copper fals that circulated among the masses. It was the coin of the marketplace, the workshop, and the farm. Its importance in the daily lives of millions of people cannot be overstated. One of the brilliant things about this new system was its combination of standardization and local identity. The basic design, calligraphy, no images, was the same everywhere. A traveler could go from Damascus to Cordoba and recognize the currency. However, the inscriptions on the coins would change. Each coin proudly stated the city where it was minted. So you could find a fals from Misr, Egypt, Dimashq, Damascus, or Al-Andalus, Islamic Spain. This makes them a fantastic source for historians. We can map the extent of the Caliphate's influence and track the economic importance of different cities just by studying where these copper coins were made. The design of the coins also evolved. The early Umayyad coins often used a stern, angular script called kufich. It looks very formal and monumental. Later, under the Abbasid Caliphate, which was based in Baghdad, more cursive and flowing styles of Arabic script began to appear. Sometimes the coins would include the name of the local governor or even the heir to the throne. This turned the coins into little political bulletins. If a governor's name suddenly disappeared from the coinage, it was a good sign that he had fallen out of favor with the caliph in the capital. The production of these coins was a major industry. Mints were complex operations, employing skilled engravers to create the dies and teams of workers to strike the coins. The quality could vary. Some coins were beautifully made, with clear, sharp inscriptions. Others were cruder, perhaps struck in a hurry, or in a provincial mint with fewer resources. But even the crudest falls served its purpose. It provided a reliable medium of exchange that oiled the wheels of a huge, interconnected economy. The copper falls was a true success story, a testament to the administrative skill and vision of the early Islamic empires. The arrival of Islamic rule in India, starting with the Delhi Sultanate in the 13th century, brought with it a new chapter in the story of copper coinage. The new rulers brought their own monetary traditions, inspired by what was happening in the wider Islamic world. They introduced coins that were very different from the Hindu coins that came before them. Out went the images of gods and kings, and in came Arabic and Persian calligraphy. The main copper coin was known by various names, but one of the most common was the jital. It became the standard small-value coin for centuries. One of the most famous, or perhaps infamous, experiments with copper currency came from a sultan of Delhi named Muhammad bin Tughlaq in the 14th century. He was a brilliant, but eccentric ruler. He decided to introduce a token currency, where copper and brass coins were declared to have the same value as expensive silver and gold coins. It was a radical idea, far ahead of its time. The plan was that people would trust the sultan's decree. Unfortunately, it was a spectacular failure. The design of the token coins was too simple, and forgers had a field day, creating counterfeit coins in backyard workshops. The economy was flooded with fakes, and the whole system collapsed. A much more successful reform came later, under the ruler Sher Shah Suri in the 16th century. He was a brilliant administrator who laid the foundations for the later Mughal Empire. He completely overhauled the currency system. He introduced a high-quality silver coin called the rupiah, the ancestor of the modern rupee. And to go with it, he created a standardized copper coin called the dam. 40 dams were equal to 1 rupiah. This created a clear, fixed relationship between silver and copper, which made trade much simpler and more predictable for everyone. The dam was a heavy, well-made coin, and it became incredibly popular. The system created by Sher Shah Suri was so good that the mighty Mughal emperors adopted it. For centuries, the dam was the main copper coin used across their vast empire. It was used to pay soldiers, collect taxes from farmers, and for all sorts of everyday purchases. Even the prices of goods in the market were often quoted in dams. In the later Mughal period, as the empire weakened, the quality of the coins declined, and regional powers like the Marathas began to mint their own copper coins, such as the shivrai. But the legacy of the dam was immense. It had set the standard for copper currency in India for generations. While the dam was dominating in Mughal India, another great Islamic empire was flourishing further west, the Ottoman Empire. The Ottomans, with their capital in Istanbul, controlled a huge territory that stretched from southeastern Europe through the Middle East and North Africa. They too had a sophisticated currency system. At the top were the gold sultani and the silver akçe. But for the hustle and bustle of the Grand Bazaar and the countless other markets across the empire, the most important coin was the humble copper manghir. It fulfilled the exact same role as the dam in India. The design of the Ottoman manghir was distinct. Like other Islamic coins, it avoided human portraits. Instead, it was covered in beautiful calligraphy. A typical manghir would feature the tugra of the ruling sultan. The tugra was a highly stylized and intricate monogram, combining the sultan's name and titles into a unique and elegant symbol. It was like a royal signature, a stamp of imperial authority. Seeing the tugra on a coin was a constant reminder, even in the most remote corner of the empire, of who was in charge. The coins also included the name of the mint and the year the sultan came to the throne. The Ottomans had mints in dozens of cities, from Cairo in Egypt to Belgrade in modern-day Serbia. Each mint produced manghirs, and sometimes their style could be slightly different, reflecting local tastes. The value of the manghir relative to the silver akçe was not always fixed. It could fluctuate depending on the price of copper and the government's policies. Sometimes the state would change the weight of the coins or the official exchange rate, which could cause confusion and frustration for ordinary people. It's a reminder that money has always been a deeply political thing. The manghir remained a key part of Ottoman economic life for centuries. It allowed the vast and diverse economy of the empire to function on a daily basis. A farmer selling vegetables in a small Anatolian town, a fisherman in Greece, or a craftsman in Syria would all have used these copper coins. They are a tangible link to the everyday lives of people who are often left out of the grand histories of battles and palaces. By studying these small copper discs, we can get a feel for the economic pulse of one of the world's most powerful and long-lasting empires. As we move into the 17th and 18th centuries, the world was changing. Global trade was booming, and vast quantities of silver and gold were being shipped around the globe, especially from the Americas. This meant that for large-scale transactions, gold and silver coins became even more dominant. The great trading companies and powerful states dealt in precious metals. You might think that this would have made the humble copper coin obsolete, but you would be wrong. In fact, in many ways, it became more important than ever for the vast majority of the population. Think about the structure of society. Most people were not wealthy merchants or bankers. They were farmers, laborers, small-scale artisans, and shopkeepers. Their economic lives revolved around small, frequent transactions. They needed to buy food for the day, sell a few eggs from their chickens, or pay for a simple repair. A silver coin was often far too valuable for these purposes. Imagine trying to buy a single piece of fruit with a coin that was worth a whole day's wages. It would be impossible to get the right change. This is where copper came in. Copper coins were the essential lubricant of the local economy. They allowed for the division of value into tiny, manageable units. This ability to make small payments is crucial for a healthy economy. It enables people with very little capital to participate in the market. The widespread availability of copper coins meant that even the poorest members of society could buy and sell goods and services. Without a reliable supply of small change, the economic lives of ordinary people would have ground to a halt. The big-shot merchants might have been counting their silver, but it was copper that kept the village market alive. So, far from disappearing, the role of copper simply became more specialized. It was solidified as the currency of the people. This also had a cultural impact. Copper coins were familiar, tangible objects passed from hand to hand countless times. They feature in folk tales and proverbs about wealth and poverty. Their physical presence in the daily lives of millions gave them a significance that went beyond their simple monetary value. They represented the world of everyday work, of making ends meet, and of the small-scale commerce that forms the bedrock of any society. They were, and remained, the people's money. The journey of the copper coin doesn't end with the age of empires. As we enter the modern era, the nature of money changed dramatically. The Industrial Revolution brought new technologies for minting coins, allowing them to be produced with incredible speed and uniformity. Gone were the days of hand-hammered irregular pieces. Now machines could strike perfectly round coins with intricate designs. This was the age of standardization. Governments wanted their currency to be a symbol of national pride and modernity, and that meant high-quality, identical coins for everyone. Pure copper, however, started to fall out of favor for coinage. While it was historically important, it is also a relatively soft metal. Pure copper coins can wear down quickly, and their details can become smooth and unreadable after years of circulation. So, mints began to experiment with alloys. By mixing copper with other metals like zinc or tin, they could create bronze. Bronze is much harder and more durable than pure copper, but it still retains that familiar reddish-brown color. Later, other alloys like cupronickel, copper and nickel became popular for their silvery appearance and extreme durability. In the 20th century, as India and Pakistan became independent nations, they established their own modern mints and currencies. But the legacy of the old system remained. The new Indian rupee was divided into 100 paisa. The name paisa itself is a descendant of the old copper currency traditions. The first small denomination coins of modern India and Pakistan were made of bronze, a direct technological and material descendant of the historic copper coins. They served the same purpose, providing the small change needed for everyday life, a role their ancestors had played for over 2,000 years. Today, the physical coin itself is facing a new challenge from digital payments and credit cards. Yet, The legacy of the copper coin is all around us. It lives on in our language when we talk about coppers or pennies. It lives on in the collections of numismatists who study these coins to unlock the economic and cultural secrets of the past. Each ancient copper coin is a miniature time capsule, a direct physical link to the hand of a person who lived centuries ago. From the first Karshapanas of India to the Ottoman menghir and the modern bronze paisa, the story of the copper coin is a story of human ingenuity, trade, and the quest for a shared measure of value.